Welcome to Church 3.0, presented by Apollos, a podcast where we explore the nuances of modern Christian culture and the challenges of cultivating community while maintaining impact and relevance in the church. Join Tyler Vance, COO of Apollos, as he talks to church leaders from around the world to gain a deeper understanding of the Christian faith in a modern context. Push boundaries, change lives, create a more hopeful future.
Hey, welcome today, guys. I got an incredible guest with us. This is Jay Owen. Jay is the founder of a marketing company called Business Builders. He wears a ton of hats with that and building community in marketing agencies across the United States. But he also is a significant leader at one of Apollo's customers, Church of 1122. Jay, thank you so much for jumping in and spending some time with us today. Did I miss anything on introduction? Anything you want to highlight that's different or
Well, it's funny.
more nuanced?
I was at a business meeting one time, a C12 meeting, really great community of Christian CEOs, and he asked me to kind of give the group an update on who I am and whatnot. So I start rattling off businessy things, resume stuff. He's like, "Yeah, that's great, but what about your family?" And I was like, "Oh, that's great." So the big thing I'd add is I've got 5 kids, all growing quickly towards adulthood from 12 to 20. And if I'm not wearing one of the business or church hats, I'm usually with them.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. As a father, we celebrated a big milestone in our house this last weekend. My last kid officially graduated from our kids ministry in our church.
There you go.
And so we are beyond in our context, that's yellow halls. So we're beyond the yellow halls. And so I don't know if there's a tear of sadness or joy in my wife's eye.
No doubt.
So I love that. Man, you come from an incredible marketing background. How are you seeing marketing kind of ramp up in the church space? If I look over the last 10 years, I think marketing has emerged as a voice. I see a lot more churches with marketing specific roles. How do you see that intersection of marketing and church coming together?
Yeah, I think it's extremely important, and probably important to define our terms. I think what I found
Sure.
a lot in the church world vocationally is you mentioned business-y terms like marketing and sales, and people start getting real uncomfortable real fast. But what we really mean by marketing is just getting the attention of many people. And so I'd ask the
Sure.
question of any church anywhere, isn't that what we want? Don't we want to spread the good news as far as wide, as we possibly can from our neighbors to the nations? And the answer is yes, of course we do. And so the way that I think about it is, how do I use all of these traditional marketing mediums or marketing vehicles in a way to help us multiply the message to reach as many people wherever they may be around the globe? And we've got more opportunity for that now than ever before. So it's very exciting.
Yeah, marketing is a piece of the gospel, is it not? That's what you're
right.
saying. Dude, I love that. We could click in on that. I want to deviate. I want to come back to that. I want to talk about, in your business, you are building some incredible communities. And so I just want to give overview, and then as we kind of give some overviews, let's kind of double click into some things as we go along.
Yeah, I mean, on the community side, I believe the world, and I'm gonna tend to want to take us on a different rabbit trail here, and I won't go there, but the world's diverging in 2 distinct directions. One is highly autonomous. I mean, nobody can get through any webinar, podcast, keynote, or event without hearing about AI. And me too.
Sure.
I'm into it. I love this stuff. And so it's distinctly robotic in one way, but the other way is distinctly human. And it's distinctly community driven. The thing that I always point people back to, especially Christians, is if you look in Genesis, God made many things, and he said they were good. And the first time he said something wasn't good, he said it wasn't good for man to be alone. Now, it's in the context of creating Eve and marriage as a union and things like that, but I think it's even broader than that. It's community as a whole. The example that our pastor always gives is, he's like, if you watch any of these nature shows, and these animals are out grazing by the field, and there's the big group of gazelles over here, drinking from the pond together. And then there's the one little gazelle all by itself at the end of the pond. which one gets eaten by the lions? It's the one that's
Mm.
alone. And so we're not made to be alone. We're not made to do this alone. I think, especially in the entrepreneurial worlds I get to be in, you hear a lot of people say things like, it's lonely at the top. And I'm like, only if you let it. And so
Yeah.
I've worked really hard over the last couple of years to build a couple of different communities. And some of them just naturally kind of come together, like-minded people going, hey, we should get together more often. We should share ideas because collaboration is better than competition. And
Yeah.
and so, yeah, we've started building some distinct communities for agency owners and leaders, and then just for business builders and business owners, leaders, entrepreneurs as a whole. And then now there's kind of this third bucket with the Church of 1122. We're launching our very first Church Leaders Summit this fall in
Nice.
September. It's going to be an awesome time. Church leaders from all over the country are gathering here at the beach in Northeast Florida at the Church of 1122. So I would put that as a kind of a third bucket of community that I get to help lead.
Yeah, that's incredible. You you highlighted something. I was actually just listening to a podcast that Carrie Newhoff and Bobby Greenwald were doing that released, and they're talking about AI. And so you clicked on it. So I'm gonna double click on this. We are emerging in a world where trust is an incredibly valuable commodity, because you cannot trust what you see online anymore. Most of it is AI generated. There's a ton of content being AI generated. A lot of times we can identify that, right? There wasn't, really this thing happening. It is these two worlds combined, the and they're not real, and we can have a radar for that. But there's also a lot of content that is real enough that there's distrust that's emerging. And so the opportunity is for authenticity, for trust, for something that's real. And that the convergence of AI is actually building a stronger case for deeper, real community,
Yeah.
because we don't find places where we trust things as much.
Yeah, this is the
Oh.
thing that I think is really interesting is I actually believe a lot of the digital pieces of the puzzle will become less valuable over time, or at least easier access, lower entry points. For
Mhm.
example, people will be able to make motion-length pictures that are fully CGI rendered that look real from their basement, with a good internet connection, with practically no money. But on the other side, people are going to want to be in person. Like, I think this actually bodes well for the church. I think that people are going to long to be in physical community. I mean, we learned this during COVID. Like, Zoom calls are a great opportunity. Podcasts are great. All these things are wonderful. But frankly, there's
Yeah.
going to come a point where this might not even be a real conversation. We're just running our AI
Sure.
avatars to have a conversation about what we might say or would say based on our past history. That's a real thing. Like, that people are developing this technology right now, and it will be so good. It'll be indistinguishable. And so people, I
Yeah.
believe, take something like music or even art. Digital art is going to be totally, replaceable. But
Mhm.
I think that physical, tangible art of somebody that actually painted this one-of-a-kind thing will actually be more valuable. Music, you'll just be able to define what you want to hear, and you'll hear it on a digital stream. But I actually think that'll make in-person live concerts and live music more desirable and more valuable. So I love the AI conversation. I was recently on a podcast called Theology in the Raw and debated whether or not AI should even be used in ministry. And my position is absolutely it should, because it's a tale of the master giving many talents to his servants and going, what are you going to do with this? And I'm going to do my best to use it for good. And the argument, one of the primary arguments on this podcast, not to ruin it, if anybody wants to go watch it, you can, but the primary argument against my case was that we don't know what we can trust. And I said, well, yes, but are you saying that I could trust every podcast I listen to or everything that comes out of every pulpit in America or every book that I read? Of course not. Why? Because that's not the ultimate holder of truth. And so the question really is, what is the ultimate holder of truth? And that's the Word of God. At least as Christians, that's what we would say. So the problem is not the delivery mechanism of an answer. The problem is we don't know what the real truth is, which is the Bible. So maybe we should study our Bibles a little bit more. And whether it's AI delivering us content or some preacher from a pulpit, we'll be able to actually discern what truth is.
Well, and to give node to another conversation I've had in a previous podcast, we are I think emerging into a generation where people that show up on the weekend in our physical church spaces, we have led seeker movements, to use old terminology. They will, I think, pretty quickly be defined as really engaged people, because all of the seeking is done in these digital ecosystems and digital spheres, right? So they're not people showing up on the weekend unknowing
Right? They know what
what's
they're getting
going on.
into. That's right.
They know exactly what they're getting into. They have done deep research. They've probably been connected with you for a very long while,
Mm-hmm.
watching you, and they have a very clear expectation based on who you present yourself as digitally,
Yeah,
right?
and part of
And it
our, I
goes
mean,
back to
yeah, I was just gonna say part of our
it,
strategy is to think about the, part of the digital piece of the puzzle. When somebody goes and watches a live service on YouTube, we want it to be a window into the room. Now, people have different opinions on this. Some people craft totally custom online experiences. I'm not
Sure.
saying anything's right or wrong, but for us, what we actually, I don't know if this is how I'd say it, but I'll just say it anyway, is I actually want to create a little FOMO. Like, I want people to
Yeah.
be like, I wish I was there in person. We should get in our car and drive there. People literally, at this point, vacation. I mean, granted, we're in Florida, so that's a little bit of a cheat, but people will vacation here and make coming to church part of their agenda because they watch us online, and it's like, praise God. But when they get there, they do know what they're going to get, because what they see online is what it is in person, So I'm trying. We're
Yeah,
trying to give a mirror into the room ultimately.
absolutely. And I would say even this of I mean, we want to create layer one, level one, you know, authentic community in a digital space, but we really want to extend that to sitting in your living room with someone, right? A dinner table with someone. These very intangible, irreplaceable in-person experiences, right?
Yeah, very easy
The
to
hand of a
share.
pastor praying over you,
Exactly.
right? We can't replace that digitally, but we can lead you to a place where you're comfortable enough to experience that in person if we steward it well.
Yep, 100%. And we want to make it as easy as possible for people to share stories that they've heard in sermons, to share not just the whole sermon, but clips of it that might be a little bit more
Yeah.
relatable. Our pastor is awesome, but he preaches for a very long time. And so if somebody's never listened to a 55-minute sermon before, you know, first of all, they're going to listen to it. It's going to feel like it was 20 minutes anyway. But sometimes a short little reel or a short clip is more accessible. They watch a handful of those, then they watch a 5-6 minute clip. Then they end up going, I got to watch I got to hear the whole context of this thing. They listen to the whole sermon. And now they listen to a next one, and next one. Now before you know it, they're doing series after series online. And it's that snowball effect that you'll see in YouTube, especially, where that
Yeah.
ball starts to gain traction because other people are watching another thing and another thing and another thing, and it just multiplies.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little more tangible on the church marketing space. I mean, you just kind of talked about a very clear, thing you're seeing, or a tangible action thing. What are you seeing in church market space if you zoom out and go, hey, overall, here's a trend that I'm noticing, I'm paying attention to, it's emerging. If you don't have eyes on this, you should have eyes on it. What would that be?
Well, I think that we're in an industry where marketing in general is littered with shiny object syndrome. And I love shiny objects, I like to chase them. I'm real ADHD. That said, like when I started on staff at the Church of 1122, I had so many people. It's kind of like back when the metaverse was first being used as a word 3 or 4 years ago,
Yep.
And everybody's asking me like, are we going to do metaverse in the church? And at church, and I'm like, I mean, we don't even have a good Instagram account right now, so no, we're not. We don't even have a good website, And so I think it's like a good golf game. Like a good golf game is determined by the fundamentals. How's your swing? Like, have you worked on it? Like it's defined by many hours at the practice ground. It's not this like super fancy, flashy thing. Like the things that we've done at 1122 that have been successful over the last few years that have resulted in exponential online growth in every measurable category are the simple things. They're the basic stuff, like Let's have a great website that's the anchor of the marketing hub. Let's tell good stories on social media. Let's showcase the life of the church and what is God doing in the church. Let's use it to pull clips out to spread the gospel, to create engagement, to make it easy to share with your brother or your neighbor or your daughter or your son, or your mom or
Yeah.
your dad or whoever. Like, let's make those things easy and multiplicative. And then let's look at all of our channels where we're distributing all this content and go, can we narrow them down a little bit to create some traction in a particular space? YouTube is a good example of that. And we've just seen exponential growth. I mean, we've gone from, I think 3 years ago, we had about 8,000 subscribers on YouTube, and we're well over 100,000 now. And I just think we're just barely scratching the surface.
Yeah.
Like, we're just
Yeah.
barely scratching the surface because the fundamentals are now done. Collecting your own lists of emails, your own list of phone numbers, clearly and consistently communicating to those people, but not overdoing it, knowing when to pull which levers. Those pieces of the puzzle that are very basic are the things that actually move the needle. And yet you can sit in meetings, people are like, it's not very exciting. And I'm like, you know what is exciting? People coming to know Jesus Christ because they have heard the gospel over and over and over in every platform they possibly click into. That's what I'm into. And so, that's what we're trying to accomplish. And it's not always the coolest, fanciest thing. It's build the basics, have good lists, communicate clearly and often, ask them to tell other people.
I'm like, you're stirring my soul here. I'm just like, whatever your hand finds to do it with all of your
Yeah,
heart.
for sure.
Not whatever your hand finds to do 20 of them.
Right.
Yeah, like, golly. What a strategic lesson the local church could take a dose of. Well said, man. Well said. As you talk about that, it sounds like Church of 1122 is doing basics really well. How did you get there?
It was interesting. So, like, historically for me, I've only ever been my own boss. I started my own business when I was 17, grown it year over year over year. And so, I've only ever worked with people really that I hired. I chose to hire, And so when I took the role at Church of 1122, I had a pretty big team that I got handed. And it's like, here's your team. And I'm like, okay, well, I got to figure this out, And so I kind of thought of it like building a marketing agency inside of the church. That's not how I would have told church people that I was doing, but that's
Sure.
basically what I am doing, which is build a consistent team of people who know what their jobs are, they know what winning looks like, and they have good, key result areas for each of their roles, put the right people in the right seats. I mean, it's not unique to church. This is how business works, how organizations work, how nonprofits work, how churches work. Put the right people in the right seats, have them align with a clear mission and vision, and just send them on their way, And it sounds simpler than it actually is, but over time, it's also a matter of going, let's just make a big list of all the things we need to fix. And some of these things we can fix with technology. Some of them we need to hire people for. Some of them we need processes for. And so let's sort them in order. And let's just work through the list as much as we can. And some things felt like it just took forever, because I'm
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, can I just change these things right now? And often you can't when you're working inside of a large organization. But over time, you start to see traction and you go, oh, this is actually kind of working. So that's exciting.
One of the things I see church leaders struggle with this significantly. So I'm going to ask a very pointed or a very deep dive question. I think, how do you, as a leader over the areas that you are at Church of 1122, create clarity for your employees that are aligned with organizational wins?
Well, I think the church has historically done this really well, actually, well before I even got there. I mean, Pastor Joby was very wise, along with the elders, to have a really clear code of conduct. Some people would call it core values. It's kind of like a layer into core values. Like, how do we actually act on a day-to-day basis? What does that look like? And I also think two of the things he's very good at as a lead pastor is clear mission. This is what we're doing. We're a movement for all people to discover and deepen a relationship with Jesus Christ. And here's how we're going to do it. And here's what the focus is for this year. It's very clear every year, very systematized. And, culturally, just the expectation of how everybody's supposed to operate. And so every year we put together what's called MAPS, Ministry Action Plans, which is In the business world, we would call them like quarterly rocks or something like that from Traction. We do a lot of EOS stuff in the worlds I'm in, for people that are familiar with that. But it's kind of the same thing. Like, what are the big objectives, and mainly, how do they align to the mission? Like, as a church, where are we going? Because one of the biggest problems in any organization is all these micro missions and micro visions. Now, at business builders and agency builders, it is my vision. It's my job. It's my company. It's my responsibility to point and go, we're going over there together. And if you're into that, let's go. And if you're not, go find another ship to get on. Love you, but that we're going over there. But at 1122, it's not my job to do that. My job is to look at Pastor Joby and go, where are we going? And he's like, we're going over there. And then, as an independent thinking human being, I get to go, is that somewhere that I think that God is calling me to go? And the answer is, yeah, let's go. Now, how can I help in the areas that I'm responsible for? Do everything that I possibly can to align with that mission, because it's not my vision. It's not my mission. There's not 10 missions and 10 visions. We always say we unite around a clear vision, and that's incredibly important. And this is where people drift, especially in the church, because there are 1,000 good things that we could be doing with our time, energy, and talents. And one of our other pastors always says this. He says, we can do anything, but we can't do everything. And that's a good word, like where we're at, in church land, if you will, is incredible. It's an incredible opportunity that God's bestowed us, an incredible responsibility. But we still can't just do everything. We have to be really clear missionally. And so where do we decide that? Well, it's around the mission and vision that Pastor Joby puts forward, and we just follow that, And if I didn't think that was where God was calling me to be in this season, I would go do something else, because it's not Joby's church either. Ultimately, it's God's church, but he is doing his best along with the guidance of the elders to set that direction. It's our job to follow it.
Yeah, I absolutely. And I mean, coming from an organization in a local church that was very laser focused, obviously, as teams would come and visit us, the hardest question was like, well, how do you handle that? And it's like, we don't.
Yeah.
Like, for us, it's black and white. Like I don't know how you would handle, like, that sounds like it sucks. But for us, like, we're pretty laser focused on vision. However, within organizations, I often see leaders struggling with, how does the work I do impact the overall clarity of where we are going? And
Sure.
you sound like you've been blessed with both the ability to create that yourself, but also with the ability to sit under a leader that has that defined really well.
Yeah,
Not everyone has
really
that
good at
blessing.
the other thing that he's really good at that I think a lot of leaders could learn from me too is delegation. Like, he's a really good delegator, and it takes him a minute to trust somebody with like what they're doing. I mean, once he trusts them, he's just like, all right, now I hired you to do this thing. Now you go do that thing. He is not over here thinking about what our YouTube strategy is. He's thinking about what he's going to preach on Thursday night and Sunday morning. That's it.
Yeah.
But he's probably thinking about some other things too, but primarily that's what he's thinking about, and he should. And my job is to dig into the YouTube stats and go, all right, what are we missing? How do we make this better? How do we reach more people?
How did you build that trust with him?
I think it's really important. I do think it's important that churches find somebody who is a communication / marketing / whatever title you want to put on it, who has the access to speak at the executive level. I think it's a really big mistake to be missing that, because without communication, it's hard to drive a mission and a vision internally or externally. And so I think one of the benefits I've had is being in those executive meetings to help make decisions. And Pastor Joby said from the beginning of that too, whenever he brings somebody into those meetings, is he'll say, like, look, you were hired within your area, but when you're in this room, I want you to speak into the entire, life of the church. And that feels very honoring. And he's also the kind of guy who's very determined and persistent to get things done. You don't really, make the strides that he has without that. But at the same time, he'll argue with me about, argue is maybe the wrong word, but we'll disagree over how we should approach a particular thing. But we've just been doing it long enough now that he just trusts that I'm going to do the best I can to do what's in the best interest of the church. I always joke, when I first got hired, I had somebody say something like, do you think he's using you to help promote the church, or using you to help promote his books or whatever? And I was like, no, I'm using him to promote the gospel of Jesus Christ. And and so that's kind of how I think about it. I've told him that before, and I think that's a good way to think about the marketing job in the church, is how do I leverage the resources that we have for the maximum reach of the gospel?
Yeah, no, that's a beautiful picture. And What you described in my leadership journey, I would call just the concept of push and pull,
Mm.
right? And there's oftentimes as a leader, because of my role, my responsibility, my expertise, I'm entrusted to push the right information up. But as a leader, it would be a fallacy to assume that I have the ability to always operate with 100% clarity. And so, where are the times where I am pulling appropriately for the ability to push the right things, right? And as a leader, I say, like, I never want you to bring me problems. I want you to bring me solutions, but I never mind if you need clarity about how to bring me a solution.
Yeah, for sure. And I always tell teams too, like, if I want somebody to trust me, the best way to do that is to be trustworthy. You know, do the things that I say that I'm going to do, help where I can
Yeah.
help, and just be honest and authentic about the reality of where it's at. Maybe people think they need a new team member on their team, or maybe they think they need more budget for X, Y, and Z. I'm just going to be really candid about it. I'm not going to beat around the bush or, you know, fluff their feathers with something that we're probably not going to get. I'm just going to say this is what it is. This is where we're at, and we're going to do
Yeah.
our best to figure it out. And if I can help you figure out one of those solutions, no problem. But to the solution and problem thing, I always say, like, if you're going to bring a monkey into my office, you need to take it back out with you. Now, I'll give you some feedback on how you're going to feed it and how you're going to care for it, but you're going to take your monkey back with you.
Yeah.
I don't need any more monkeys in my office. I got enough.
Yeah. That's a really good way to say that. I love that. Um, is there anything that Church of 1122 is doing? And the answer on this is yes for anyone listening, but this is a setup that other churches could learn from. Is there something, Jay, you're like, man, I really love how we got to this point. I wish other people would do more of this. That's a hard question
yeah, I mean,
in church world.
I would just say, like, I know I'm 100. Here's what I'm 100% confident of. I have as much to learn. I have more to learn than I know. Put it that way. Even though I've been doing this marketing stuff my whole life. But one thing I do love about the way our team thinks about creative, whether it is videos that are being created, stories being told, websites being built, apps being built, YouTube videos, social media, whatever, is the true heart, to the best of our ability, is simply, how do we do the right next thing that Jesus is telling us to do? And I'll give you an example. One of the things that our social media manager came up with, I thought she did a great job, is when somebody follows our Instagram account of the church, they get a message that just says, "Hey, how can we be praying for you?" It's a simple little idea. Like, it doesn't seem like much, but here's the reality. Most times people click a follow link and nothing happens. They see posts occasionally, but instead they immediately get a message. And we now automate the first message, but we do manually do the follow-ups. They're not talking to robots. They're talking to real people after the first message. And because I want robots to do what robots can do. I want people can do what only people can do. Only people can build deep, abiding relationships in a discipleship manner with people. And so we want to be a disciple-making church, that makes disciple-making disciples. And so one of the ways that our social media manager, Kendall, came up with was, what if we just ask them how we could pray for them when they first follow us? And some of their replies are wild, incredible things to be joyful for and to celebrate and to praise God, and very hard, woeful things to cry over and weep with people. And all of a sudden, this one mass broadcast channel, and everybody wants to talk about how many followers you have or how many subscribers you have and how many views you got, goes from one to many to one to one. And that's where discipleship happens. And so the one thing that I would encourage people with is that don't neglect the growth for the few. Sometimes people get 20 views, 50 views, 100 views on a reel, and they're like, but this guy over here got 1 million views on his reel. And I'm like, can you imagine if you had a room with 100 people in it sitting and listening to you to pay attention to what you're saying? Wouldn't you want to have that? Of course you would. But in social, we just make up all this fake stuff, So care about what matters, which ultimately is one-to-one discipleship relationships.
Yeah, people.
That's right.
In our context, the phrase I use is we're looking for places to put sprinkles.
Yeah.
And the analogy I use is, everyone expects a cake when they order a cake, but if you deliver a cake with sprinkles on it, and just the smallest unexpected gesture can make a world of difference. And as pastors and as people that are leading other people to discipleship relationships with Jesus, where are the places that we can do small things that are unexpected that make a world of difference? Exactly what you're talking about. No one expects an Instagram message back from a follow.
Right.
That is a small, unexpected gesture that makes a world of difference. So I love that. And to freely give, the way that we classify that is sprinkles, because everyone can think about sprinkles. If you get ice cream, it's great. I love ice cream. We're ice cream family. I take my kids to get ice cream more often in a week than I should. But that's because my wife works nights, and so I get the opportunity to be dad a lot. If we get sprinkles, it's 10 times better,
Right.
for no reason. They have no flavor. They have nothing. Anyways, that to go on. Church of 1122 is a very much a core Apollos customer and a user of the Apollos app. Talk about what you guys are doing with the app. How do you see the app in your ecosystem? You talked about social, you talked about YouTube, you talked about web. How does the app fit in your strategy of reaching people?
Yeah, it's huge. I would say that the app and the website are kind of the two central communication hubs. They're also what I would call owned property. And what I
Hmm.
mean by that is like social media is kind of rented or leased land. They can turn your a channel off whenever you want, but your app or your website are more in the owned property category. What we love about something like partnering with y'all at Apollos is, building a custom app from scratch is incredibly complicated, incredibly expensive, and it's not even just the build of it, it's the maintenance of it that people have no idea. And I know because I've been building apps in all kind of different categories and websites since I was a kid. And so having a tool that many other churches are all using together it's shared resourcing ultimately, which is I'm getting an incredible product that is being improved by many different organizations at once, which really is kind of the lifeblood of the Big C church as a whole. At the end of the day, it's not about Church of 1122 or about any other individual church. It's about the church that Jesus established, and his church forever and ever. This just happens to be our time in this particular place in his movement. And so having
Yeah.
an app that's resourced by many different churches is ultimately just going to make it better for everybody. And it's the central hub for us. I mean, everything lives on the app. Most of that's all duplicated on the website in some way. But it's had incredible traction. I mean, just watching, even looking at some of the stats behind the scenes of people engaging in daily prayer activity. I mean, you're talking about, hundreds of thousands of people a year praying for each other and acknowledging that back and forth. And that's not nothing. It's one of the key things that God
No.
tells us to do. And so being able to actually see that like played out in a chart over time is pretty great.
Yeah. The mobilization of the local church to be the church together is significant in what matters to our hearts. And so, yeah, you spoke to that really well, and I appreciate the words from coming from a world of custom apps in the local church space. It is a significant team that you have to employ, and then one of the things that I don't think people talk about a lot is knowledge transfer. We're seeing a lot of turnover of staffs in local church.
Right.
And when you have a guy that's developed your app and he's not on staff in 18 months, you my eh, as a leader in the church technology space in a local church, my average days to hire was over 400
Yeah.
for a seasoned technical role. I don't understand how you can afford to have that large of a gap if you don't have a team of 15 or 20 people, budging
Yeah,
some of
exactly.
those.
And we're saying the same thing in a lot of marketing spaces. Unless it's a really large organization, it's hard to have all the specialists that you actually need. In app development land, you need all kinds of different UI UX people. You need front end designer, back end developer, database specialist, hosting migration expert. And there's so many different roles, and they're not cheap roles, and they require significant experience. And to your point, there's a massive knowledge gap if somebody leaves. It's the same thing in agency marketing land. Is it's like
Yeah.
it's hard to have somebody who can build a website and write copy and design social media posts and know when to post them and how to schedule them and what should be the context across which different platform and what tool should actually be used in order to leverage that. So it's like you could pay 10 different people and have $1 million staffing budget,
Sure.
or you could just pay an agency, or in this case, Apollos in the app space, to solve the problem for you, usually for less than the cost of one team member. And without the worry of turnover over time. And it's improving. Like y'all are making improvements and changes in areas we didn't even necessarily ask for. You're like, oh wow, we got a new feature here or a new update that other churches asked for, or that y'all just developed internally. And so it's just constantly improving, versus having to make all those improvements yourself, which is a whole nother ballgame.
Yeah. No, I agree, and I appreciate those words. If you were I will ask for one leadership tidbit from you. It, your choice of Apollos, we would say is not your standard church app. We have a lot of engagement and community functionality. We're leaning forward in what we would desire for outcomes for churches. It is different than other church apps that are offered. What was the deciding force for Church of 1122 for choosing Apollos versus some other options in the marketplace?
Sure. I mean, I think the biggest thing for me is, while I hope Apollos is around for a very long time and spectacular, I don't want to be completely locked into any platform. So one of the things that Apollos allowed that many other platforms do not allow is for us to have our content in different places and integrate it in different ways. So for example, we could have our human, people data inside of RockRMS, which is what we use for our relationship management system. We can, in our case, but this could have been different depending on what our platform was. We have all of our website data inside of WordPress, which is separate and our own, if you will. It's not proprietary, and then even like our videos. I think maybe when we first started with y'all, it was before we had fully migrated everything to YouTube, and you didn't at the time support YouTube integration, but now it's all fully supported. And so, not being forced into I got to use your video platform, I got to upload it to a different place. I can just put it all on YouTube. In our case, some people want to use Vimeo, some use something else, no problem. But for us, the strategy was I wanted it all to feed through YouTube, and Apollos allowed us to have that kind of integration. So those custom integrations like that, where we can use different platforms that we own and have full control over, makes me feel a lot better about the long term, because I've been doing this long enough to know, people come and go. And so I like to know that we have multiple backups and certainty across different fields. And I
Yeah.
like to do things the way I want to do them, and y'all provide the systemization of a platform that already existed with most of the bells and whistles that we needed, and the flexibility. So it's kind of that hybrid between something that's totally custom developed and something that's just completely off the shelf. There's like those completely off the shelf systems where if it doesn't have what you want, you're kind of like up a creek without a paddle.
Too bad. Yeah. Yeah.
But y'all are kind of the in between, where it can just be straight off the shelf if we want it to, or we can have some things that are a little bit more custom integration wise with different platforms that we use. And that made it much more valuable for 1122 in the long term.
Well, we appreciate the partnership with Church of 1122. You guys have been incredible. You talked about your upcoming conference, first year ever. We're going to be there alongside you guys and look forward to seeing that community form. So I'm super excited about that coming up this fall. One of the things I do want to do with you before we end our time today is I want to rapid fire 4 or 5 questions, and honest, raw, concise, like short answers. I want to see what we can get just fast. Okay.
Yep.
Let's go. What's one thing churches often miss when it comes to in digital engagement?
Good process and technology are not anti-people, they're pro-people. When you have good processes and technology in place, it actually creates more space for in-person discipleship, not the opposite.
Oh, that'll preach. What's inspiring you most right now?
The leaders I get to be around, seeing other people with their desire and heart for the kingdom to do the next right thing, being around people like that changes everything.
In your years of leadership, and you've got a ton of experience, what's one leadership lesson that stands out the most?
It's never as bad as you think it is, and it'll rarely stay good as long as you hope it will. You know? And the other thing too is I would just say, like, being in the private sector for so long and then now working in vocational ministry as well as the private sector, people in ministry often say things like, Jay, you don't understand, this is ministry, not business. But in the business space, people say to me, Jay, you don't understand, this is business, not ministry. I'm like, y'all are all missing the point. It's all ministry. And ministry is not exceptionally harder than the private sector. I hate to break it to y'all in church land who've never worked in the private sector. It's just people are hard, it turns out. And there's this thing that happened in the Garden of Eden called the fall, and that's why. And so we just get to do our best with the people around us. And then remember that God is sovereign on the throne and completely in control. And I just have to rest in that beyond everything I can control.
Hot take, his kingdom come.
It's amen.
Is via his people in whatever space they occupy.
Yeah, and side tangent, like one of the things our pastor points out that I just love this is the first time Jesus performed a miracle in the Bible, his mother Mary comes to him and says, they're out of wine. He says, woman, what does this have to do with me? And then she turns to the servants, and here's what she says. This is so important. She says, just do whatever he tells you to do. And the miracle, Jesus did not turn the water into wine. He worked through his people to turn water into wine. He could have just made the water wine, but instead he said, here's what I want you to do. Go get this thing, get this ladle, dip it in there, pull it out, take it to the host. It'll all be the best wine ever. He works through his people to accomplish his mission and purpose. And so it's no different technologically. It's no different in person. We just all use the gifts he's given us to hopefully do the next right thing.
We have failed at rapid fire. That's
sorry,
okay.
I'm very bad at that.
Last question. Personal app you can't live without right now.
Personal app I can't live without right now. Whisperflow is my new favorite current app. WISPR Flow. It's an AI dictation tool. And I'm a very fast typer, but I'm a very much faster talker, as y'all can tell. I can't use good words, though, because I don't know grammar or English, apparently. But Whisperflow has changed my life. I'm so fast on the computer now because I just talk to it.
Where can people find you and connect with you as we move forward in the future?
For sure. A lot of people want to know about the AI resources that I have out there right now. I talk a lot about that in a lot of different places. You can go to aiwithj.com. I have a download there. It's good for churches, good for nonprofits, good for businesses. Just a list of resources that have been helpful to me. I'm constantly updating that. So aiwithj.com. And then for anybody out there in the church space, leadership-wise, that wants to come to our event in the fall, we'd love to have you there down here in Florida. It's going to be beautiful. Churchleadersummit.com is where you can find that information. Even email me. Maybe I'll have a promo code for you. Who knows?
Hey, there you go. Final encouragement, anything you'd say as a word of just encouragement to those listening in today?
I would just say, remember that God is in control. It's easy to look out at the world and feel like everything's on fire, and sometimes it is. And he's sovereign, and he's just, and he promised he'd be there in the valleys. He promised us, in fact, he said, in this world you will face tribulation, but take heart because I've overcome the world. And so in the midst of the tough days, whether it's in ministry or at home or your marriage or wherever else, take your burdens to him. He promised he would carry them for you.
Amen. Amen. Jay, it's been a blessing and an honor to get to spend time with you today. I appreciate your investment in the community of Apollos. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
My pleasure.